right, good morning everybody, good morning. How's everyone doing? Good, we got sound in this? It's on, light, good. Okay, I'm excited about today, and as I was preparing this week, it was just one of those times where I was just getting more and more excited, more pumped up as I was preparing this. So again, my name is Ian, I'm one of the leaders here. Jeff Utu is down in sunny California, probably enjoying an In-N-Out burger right now, which I'm so jealous about. And so, as you can see, the church is a little different, as they say, when the cat's away, the mice will play. So we're going to do something different today. You'll see all that. Today we're going to talk about choices. And I forgot that I am the one that's...
Kids.
Huh?
Kids.
Kids what? No, you guys are with us, so little kids.
Kids church.
Yeah, little kids. Yeah, so little kids. So get that, not little kids. Yeah.
Elementary.
Stick it to the man. Elementary school kids.
Right.
Today we're going to talk about choices. Okay, I am fascinated by choices. Right, how we are bombarded with choices each and every day throughout our lives. And one thing concerning choices that I really get into is predictions, especially whenever it comes to sports. Anytime Sports Illustrated in the beginning of the season says, here's who they think is their Super Bowl pick, here's who's going to win the Stanley Cup, I'm all over it. Another thing, all right, that I really enjoy is college game day, okay? Because I love college football, but I love the guy named Lee Corso. And if you've never watched college game day, all right, you're missing out. But it's where they take the big games, and they're usually at the biggest game, like yesterday they were at Oklahoma State Baylor. Sorry, Bear fans, sorry, we got waxed. Right, but he will put on the headgear of whatever mascot he thinks that team is going to win. And if you've never seen it, guess what? You're in luck. You got a little clip right here. Oh, too fast. Go back one more.
It's been what Mr. Cole. Okay, now before the season, I said I wasn't picking dogs anymore, right? First week, Clemson. I just couldn't help myself. I picked the dog. I picked you the Uncle's grandchildren are our shit. But the dogs lost. Today is my day for redemption. Me and the dogs. I was gonna pick Georgia. That's on the sign. It says, don't pick Georgia. Don't pick Georgia. Huh? Okay, I won't pick them.
That's Lee Corso making his picks, making his choice of who he thinks is going to win. Another choice that I'm always fascinated with is whenever I'm running into someone that I hadn't seen for a long time in just some random place. And I think about all the choices that I had made that day that kind of led up to, in a sense, almost like a divine encounter of running into this person. And so that's always been fascinating to me of how we were able to, all right, in that time and space, run into each other. I also work with kids a lot, and so I'm always fascinated by the choice that young ladies make whenever they choose to date, for lack of a better term, these immature boys. And I'm always fascinated by the caliber of their choosings. And so that's always been something that's fascinated me. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, is this aspect of choice, and more importantly, within choices, this aspect of settling. Okay, and so whenever we talk about settling, we're going to get you guys doing something interactive, and we're going to give you guys a choice right now. You can either be a discussion-oriented person. I know that's what I really enjoy. I like to discuss through stuff. We're going to do this almost workshop style. All right, so if you want to discuss, all right, you guys can go kind of to the outside, all right, back there, get into little groups, and we're going to talk through things, all right, do a discussion-oriented. Or if you're more of a writer, because I like to do that too, I like to process my thoughts through writing, all right, there are books that we can write on, and there are papers, and there are pens right in front of you. And also feel free to do both, all right? Some people like to write and talk at the same time. So just very quickly, this is going to be organized chaos. Everyone stand up. All right? And so figure out what you're going to do right now. Make your choice. Do you want to get into a group? All right? Do you want to grab a piece of paper? All right? Have a pen and have something to write on. So you choose. So again, if you're on the aisle, okay, you need to pass down the paper. Make sure everyone gets paper. So if you're on this side, you look on here. Right, there's paper and books right in here. Please feel free to pass them down.
Stop.
Okay?
There's paper. You just use it to write on. That's all. What we discuss.
Grab some paper.
We're going to have story time.
Oh, pens are in the back of your chair. Pens are in the back of your chair. We went and we filled those on. Anyone else need paper? Anyone else need paper? Anyone else need paper? Pens should be in the chair right behind you. Okay? Hey, Lily's already getting mad at me because I'm walking outside her circle, videotaping, so I apologize.
Yeah.
And then feel free between this, if you want to go back and record, say, you don't want to do it. I've taught high school kids for a number of years on listening interruptions and things like that. Okay? We all good? You ready to go? Rock and roll? All right. Here's our warm-up question because we got to get warmed up, we got to stretch out. We don't want to pull any muscles here. All right, so we got to make sure we're ready to go. I want you to think about this week. Reflect back. What were some of the choices you were faced with? Okay? What did you decide to do amongst those choices? Which ones turned out good? And which ones turned out bad? I'm going to give you guys about 2 minutes. I will cut you off and we will move on, but I want you to take some time to start thinking about choices that you made this week. Ready? Go!
I chose to yell at a client because I got a late night email and I should have waited till the morning when I thought it through and I would have been mad. The other side, I just had to send an apologetic, hey, I just had a cup of coffee and reread the email. And it ended up working out fine, but not till the next morning after I hardly slept that night, so I'm frustrated. That's a bad choice. I should have just asked for the first thing that I wish I'd done. Instead of being upset. That was a bad choice and I had to be with it.
I had to make a change over and get it. That's what we did last time. I lost my daughter. And I worked.
So you did both?
Spent the whole day in the attic for the call space for the wires.
Is that alright?
I just want to advice, man. That's all I'm saying. And hey, same I said that when you don't want to split the smaller goals, somehow they're around.
That was a good choice. Yeah.
20 seconds.
All right, Keith, you got your own role.
All right, wrap it up. Hopefully you guys are warmed up, ready to go. We're going to jump right into this. So, going from choices that you guys had this week, now getting into, all right, what we're going to talk about with the topic of settling. Okay, so just like I talk about with my students, you've got to be able to go from discussion to listening to writing, all right, and be able to transition well. And so, one of the stories that always stuck out to me in the Bible is the story of two brothers, okay, is Esau and Jacob. And Esau and Jacob were very different. Esau was the manly hunter. He loved to go out into the wilderness, probably had a wicked sweet beard, all right, and really good with a bow, and he could get after just chasing fire or catching fire, and so just like Katniss, just shooting all these deer and everything like that. Jacob, on the other hand, was very reserved. He was a homebody, but he loved to cook, so he's probably like, Emma, bam, all right, he'd get after it, all right, in the kitchen. And one day, all right, we have Esau come home and he's famished. He's starving. And if you know anything about us guys, we can go from manly man to drama queen when we're hungry. And so he walks in, all right, I'll put the story up there, all right. He walks in and he talks about how hungry he is. And Jacob, being very opportunistic, says, hey, I'll give you some stew, but you got to give me your birthright. Okay, and so back then, the birthright was always to the oldest. And just to make this decision a little bit more clear of what actually Esau was facing, whenever you were the firstborn, you got double the inheritance, and you got to lead the family once the patriarch was gone. And so this is, in a sense, a very interesting decision, a bowl of soup, or, all right, as I'll kind of throw up here, all right, power and wealth and things like that. And that's what he was faced with. For me, when I first read it, because as you go on with the story, all right, you'll see that Esau, in his drama queen manner, says, oh, I'm about to die. What good is this birthright going to do for me? And so he actually says, you can have the birthright. And Jacob says, no, I want it. Give me an oath. All right? And so Esau agrees. He gets his soup, eats it, and leaves. And he loses this birthright. And I remember upon first reading, I said, what a meathead. What an idiot. He gave that up. But as time has gone on since I read that story, and it's stuck with me throughout my years, I unfortunately see how much more Esau is in me than I care to admit. How a lot of times I'm being offered, all right, influence and offered this great opportunities, and a lot of times how I will settle. Case in point, I really like to jog. I'm not an avid runner, but I do like to jog, and I especially like to jog around the river trail down around Farewell Bend, all right? A little bit easier on my knees. I feel like I'm at an obstacle course when I'm going up and down, all right, and I'm out in the wilderness, which I really enjoy. And something that God really brought to my attention this year, and He was really challenging me is I have the tendency that when I am passing, all right, a fairly good-looking lady, all right, I'll say, hey, how's it going? Or good morning, or anything like that, and try to give her my best smile. And then, since it's a loop, I will think about, hey, I have the opportunity to see this girl again. And so I'll think about, all right, how do I say, hey, how you doing? All right, maybe, how I can present myself the best by kind of sucking in my gut a little bit more and maybe even flash a little dimple, okay? But God, he challenged me after one run, and He said, do you realize how much energy and thought you're expending to a 5-second encounter with a person you will never see again? Because I've never seen any of those girls that I've passed, all right? When you could be enjoying this run with me, you could be enjoying nature. And in a kind of comical story, He really kind of showed me how I have this kind of permeates throughout other areas of my life. When He's offering me this opportunity to engage with Him, but yet I put a lot of my energy and efforts into these fleeting pleasures, these fleeting moments. And so I was really challenged on that. And so it really made me think about, all right, how much, all right, am I settling whenever God is offering me these opportunities? And we're going to get more and more into that today, because what He really said specifically upon my heart was, man, you're fighting for crumbs, bro. And I got a banquet for you, all right? I'm spending all this time, all right, on these crumbs, while at the same time He's offering me this feast. And what I choose to do. All right, and so we're going to really look at that today. And so here's a question for you guys as you start to get, again, more wrestling into this aspect of settling. Okay? What tempts you to settle for less? What is that temptation? What are the things, all right, that you know, all right, attracts you? You desire it. It's the things for you that appeal to you, but you know in your heart of hearts it's settling. That God has something more. And so kind of a question off of that, what do you desire strongly, and do these desires bring you closer to God? I want you to think about the things you enjoy doing, and are they settling or are they not? So take time to write, take time to discuss. Ready? Go! Okay, 15 seconds. Plus 30. Okay, 10 seconds.
Quick 30.
Oh, you can join us. It's okay. It's like anything, you always cut it off early, keep it moving. All right, wrap that up. Wrap that up. This whole aspect of choosing and settling and choices. All right, I just finished this book called Love Does. Great book, okay? Especially if you're looking for something to read over the holidays, you got some extra time. This guy, Bob Goth, has a lot of really interesting stories, all right? So it's reader friendly. He's actually really funny, all right? I've embarrassed myself a number of times being in coffee shops and trying to suppress my laughter, and so I just kind of start shaking and people think I'm having a seizure. But it's a very, very good read, all right? And so he has this chapter that really started to talk about this aspect of settling. And he talked about the game Bigger and Better. How many people know what Bigger and Better is or have played Bigger and Better? Man, you're missing out on life. Okay? If you haven't done it, hey, get your family and go do it. Here's what Bigger and Better, all right, is all about. You start with something very small. And he tells a story of how his son Richard and some friends, they started with a dime. And so they went to a neighbor's house, and you say, hey, we're playing Bigger and Better. What can you give us for this dime? Something bigger, something better. They get a mattress. And they go to the next house, they get a ping pong table. Then they get an elk's head. All right, I've never seen these choices. All right, we always get like crazy crummy stuff. All right, but he got a really cool elk's head. And Bob Goth goes on to say, hey, right there, I would stop. All right, because an elk's head pretty cool. He said Richard kept on going, and what he ended up with is he went from a coin to a Dodge or a Ford. He gets a truck, which is really, really cool. And so in the midst of this story, he talks about he kept on going, all right, and he ends up leaving this game with the truck. And then he goes on to talk about this aspect of bigger and better and settling. And he has this quote, and we're going to kind of work through this chapter. This is going to be a lot of the premise of what we're doing today. And he is reminded by a quote based off this game of Bigger and Better with his son, that's by C.S. Lewis. And here's what C.S. Lewis says. You can read along with me if you want. I remember reading this quote from C.S. Lewis, where he says, it would seem that our Lord finds our desires not too strong, but too weak. We are half-hearted creatures, fooling about with drink and sex and ambition when infinite joy is offered us, like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in the slum because he cannot imagine what is meant by the offer of a holiday at the sea. We are far too easily pleased. And so I want you to write or discuss if you agree or disagree with this quote by C.S. Lewis. Ready? Go!
It's one of my favorite songs. And he's talking about how he wants to
show of hands. How many people would say, hey, I agree with this quote? Okay? Something that I can resonate with. All right? Any disagreeers? Going against all right, the popular consensus and things like that. One thing that I think is very interesting when he makes the comparison of an ignorant, I like how he uses the word ignorant, bringing it back into this thing of ignorant, this ignorant child who is making these mud pies when a holiday at sea is offered. And when we kind of look at it from the outside, we would think, yeah, why would someone choose that? All right, if you are offered this. And so it made me really start to think, why? Why did I settle for the things that I settled for? Why do I do it? What is the appeal? Because there has to be an appeal there, right? There has to be some type of attraction within this decision that's making me choose, all right, this lesser path, this lesser opportunity, all right, versus the holiday at sea. And I started thinking about this aspect of lust and the path that lust usually takes. And we can lust over a lot of different things. I'm just going to, all right, share the thing that I know I've struggled with, all right, which whenever I was 5 years old, all right, I was actually exposed to pornography. And so it's something that's always been a part, unfortunately, of my life and the path that it took. And usually with lust, there is first a desire. We are presented with a choice. And I would usually say there's usually a healthy choice and there's an unhealthy choice. Right? Really, what I'm desiring is love. I'm really desiring, all right, something that God has hardwired me for. That I desire to be love, to express love, to feel love, to give love, all right, within this aspect, all right, of lust. But the thing is that whenever I choose the unhealthy one, I usually choose it because right away it gives this immediate satisfaction. It's the immediate, all right, it's presented right in front of me. So I indulge in it. So I'm presented with the choice, and then I go to indulgence. Okay? And so I step into that realm of indulgence. And then next, there's the satisfaction. Now, depending on what you're lusting after, all right, will determine kind of the duration of satisfaction. All right? For me, dealing with this whole aspect of lust and pornography and things like that, that satisfaction was usually very short-lived. It was something to where, all right, you got this excitement, you got this feeling, boom, it was done. And once I started really being called into a life with God, I really started to see that this wasn't a part of His plan. And so, anytime I would struggle with the desire, anytime I would go into the indulgence, anytime I would have the satisfaction, for me, it was usually followed by guilt and shame. I didn't like that I was doing it. I knew God was giving me something greater. And ultimately what I was wanting, again, was love. I was wanting a relationship. All right? But usually what I ended up with is I was usually alone. I usually had feelings of emptiness and abandonment. Right? And what I was really wanting, all right, was to, again, have someone, but at the end of that, all right, when I indulged in satisfaction and emotion, I was left on my own. And that was kind of the interesting path, all right, of lust, is then it continues to go on and on and on until we take actions to prevent that. Okay? But I just wanted to take a really quick side or some time to just kind of say why and what is going on and what are we actually receiving when we choose the path of least resistance. We choose, all right, the temporary satisfaction. We choose the immediate, all right, desire whenever it comes like that. And usually we're left, all right, feeling empty, feeling abandoned, and feeling ultimately, I know for me, in that alone. And so those are the things I know I have struggled with whenever it comes to that. Okay? So next, Paul goes on to talk about a story of the rich young ruler as we continue into this aspect of settling. All right? The quote of C.S. Lewis, he goes on to talk about this. Okay? He says, this quote reminds me of a passage in the Bible about a young guy who had a lot of money. He was a good guy, very religious, kept the commandments, and the whole bit. Jesus told this upstanding guy that if he really wanted to know God, he needed to sell all of his possessions and follow Jesus. If you're not too familiar with the story, all right, the guy's called the rich young ruler. He comes, he says, how can I get eternal life? All right? And Jesus ultimately said, after the guy said, well, I kept all the commandments, I'm a good guy, I've done all these things since I was young, Jesus said, well, you lack one last thing. And that thing was to sell all of his possessions. And so God continues within the story. He says, the man was sad about the exchange. Like me, he liked his stuff, but he liked Jesus too. Ultimately, though, that young man decided he worked too hard for what he had. Whatever he had to trade to get to Jesus was just too important. And what Jesus had to offer was just too intangible. So he chose to keep his stuff rather than follow Jesus. Jesus doesn't have this conversation to shame the rich young ruler. The challenge that comes into sharp relief is whether we are willing to give up all we have to follow him, to know God. Are we willing to trade up? It is a question worth asking because the answer will shape your life one way or the other. This aspect of trading up, the bigger or better. And so our next discussion question is, what are some decisions that you have made that have shaped your life? I know for me, really quick, all right, the choice to follow Jesus, the choice to move out here, the choice, all right, to choose a job or not choose a job. Right? Those things for me have shaped my life in one way or the other. So I want you guys to discuss it and or write about what are the important decisions when you look back have shaped your life. Ready? Go. Again, as we are going through this, one of my hopes is that you are kind of sifting through, all right, kind of your choices, the decision making that you have, and what you have chosen, or what has been offered to you. So this becomes a time that's more personal. It becomes a time to where, all right, you might even be wrestling through some things, all right, as we are going through, all right, aspects of this book and these questions. Okay? And so, Bob Goff continues with this aspect of trading up and bigger and better and choices that we have. And he goes to say this about the rich young ruler and Jesus. Jesus is basically saying, look, none of the stuff you have is going to last, including you. You've only got a dime's worth of life. Come and trade up. Come follow me, and you can know God. In that sense, Jesus isn't requesting a sacrifice at all. He's asking us to play bigger and better, where we give up ourselves and end up with him. And I think a lot of times in our choices, I know my choices, a lot of the reasons why I settle is fear. All right? Because I am afraid to give up some stuff, or I'm afraid, all right, that I am going to be either exposed or make myself vulnerable, all right, and I look at it from what I'm giving up. But he says here, which I think is very interesting, when we look at it from Jesus' standpoint and what he's really offering, it's not really a sacrifice at all, even though there's a giving up. It's actually, you're giving something up to take on something much better. It's important to note here that Jesus didn't ask everybody to give up all their stuff. There was something he wanted to teach the young man, that he wasn't as holy as he thought he was. He wanted to teach the young man that he still needed God's help, to look at what he had and decide whether he would rather have that or trade up and have what Jesus is offering, a life with him. Okay? And when I look back at my choices this week especially, it reminded me of a time this season whenever I was talking to my football players. I coach freshman football over at Mountain View High School, and we talked about seizing the moment. Because if you know about the sport of football, right, you practice a lot more than most sports compared to how much you actually play. And so the games take on kind of this heightened significance that you only get one opportunity a week to make it worthwhile. Because not too many people enjoy practice. I know I did not enjoy practice. I did all that hard work for the games. But you have to seize that moment. And I remember talking to the guys and saying, guys, in life, I have regrets. I know people will sit there and say, I don't have regrets, everything worked out for a reason and things like that, but I know myself, I look back when I was presented with opportunities and I did not seize those moments. Now, on the flip side, has God taken my brokenness and weaved a beautiful tapestry through my life and done amazing things? Absolutely. One of my favorite words is the word mosaic. I actually got to go to a church when I was down in LA called Mosaic, and what it is broken pieces that are brought together to form a beautiful picture, to form a beautiful piece of art. And I think that's what God does with our lives. I think that's what he does with our community here. He takes these broken pieces and he weaves them together, all right, and does it. But at the same time, I know that I have missed out on opportunities that could have made me better or put me in a better situation where I'd have a deeper relationship with God. And I look back on those moments. I look back whenever I played college football and I played to fail and not to succeed. And I remember that I really lost an opportunity to really step up. I remember I had opportunities to tell people what I felt about them, and I did not step up to the plate. And I thought of how much more boldness or courage or what path of life could have taken. So I admit it. I have regrets. I have missed out on opportunities. Will God, who started a good work in me, carry it out to completion on the day of Christ Jesus? Absolutely. Amen. That's a beautiful thing about that. But at the same time, I'm not where I could be. And so this whole aspect of sacrifice and trading up, all right, I have to admit it, I have regrets. And so our discussion question for this, are there areas in your life where you know God has or is calling you to engage with him more, but you have settled for something else? Think about that. I'm going to give you some extra time for the inputs to process through that. Ready? Go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe that's
Hey, 15 seconds. 15 seconds. All right, as you guys are processing through this aspect of settling in areas where you can say, hey, I have settled, I have made this choice for something less, all right, I have felt God's tug in my life, all right, if that's you, hopefully you're starting to kind of name it. Just to, again, take kind of a side moment real quick, a little time of why we do. We talk about this whole aspect of lust, of fear, but Bob Goff makes this interesting point about pride. How a lot of times it's more pride than it is the possession or the person or the actual tangible thing. This is what he talks about. I think it was really interesting and good to spend some time on. Actually, the real game of bigger and better that Jesus is playing with us usually isn't about money or possessions or even our hopes. It's about our pride. He asks if we'll give up that thing we're so proud of, that thing we believe causes us to matter in the eyes of the world, and give it up to follow him. He's asking us, will you take what you think defines you, leave it behind, and let me define who you are instead? When we get our security from Christ, we no longer have to look for it in the world. And that's a pretty good trade. And I think it's interesting going back to this part of ignorance. I said we'd come back to it. I think a lot of times, I know whenever I looked at why I chose stuff, at the time, I would say I was choosing what I thought was best. I kind of had this veil over me. I was blinded by pride. All right, and I kind of just thought this tractor beam, all right, on that thing. I thought it was the best for my life. When I get some time away from it, or some time where it's elapsed, I realized that wasn't a good choice. Why did I make that choice? And again, when I look back, I think of the lust or the fear, or a lot of times the pride, all right, that really set in. And I thought that this really was significant to me. This is what really caused me to matter. Okay, again, kind of going back to my first story, I think a lot of times why I settle, all right, in the area of with that sort of jogging is because I desire to be desired. Okay, and so that's something that I crave. That's something that I pursue. And it's again kind of this pride on image. Right? And there is a healthy thing. God is desiring us, and he's calling out to us. I think of how much I'm settling, all right, for the second best, the third best, and things like that. But I think a lot of times pride blinds us, and we think we're making the best choice, but really, all right, we're not. And so, going back to our discussion question, do you agree that it's more our pride that keeps us from choosing a life fully devoted to Jesus? Talk about that. Yes or no? Why? And for you, what are the things that you are most proud of that you feel makes you matter in the eyes of this world? Go! The deeper questions get hard to hear. How much time do you need? All day? Okay, as you guys are wrapping up that thought or that response,
They're working on it.
gee. So, as we look to move on, we've looked at some stories, okay, where people were offered choices. We looked at Jacob and Esau, where Esau was offered the choice of soup, or he was offered the choice of his birthright. We looked at the story of the rich young ruler, where Jesus said, hey, you can come and follow me, or you can keep all your stuff. What do you want to do? Okay? And we looked at kind of reasons why we settle, or the temptation to kind of take the other route whenever God is offering something bigger, something better, all right, for us to engage in. And so, just so we're on the same page as we get into our action step portion of our discussion, I don't want this to be a guilt trip, all right? I don't want this to hang over your head, all right, but I'm hoping that it's been insightful. Okay? I don't want this to be kind of a health and wealth gospel to where we look at, oh, we're settling for this and now we're going to strive after, materialism or fame or things like that. All right? And definitely I want it to be about American consumerism. What I do want it to be about is an opportunity to engage deeper with our Creator, who is inviting us into a life of adventure, of purpose, and of love. Okay, because that's what He is offering to us. And it is a story that Jesus talked about, all right, whenever He sends out these invites to a banquet. I'm not sure if Jeff talked about this story once before, but I kind of feel he did, or a similar story. All right, but it's a parable about a great feast. Okay? The man prepared a great feast and sent out many invitations. When the banquet was ready, he sent his servant to tell the guests, come, the banquet is ready. But they all began making excuses. One said, I just bought a field and must inspect it. Please excuse me. Another said, I just bought 5 pairs of oxen and I want to try them out. Please excuse me. Another said, I now have a wife, so I can't come. Maybe that one's legit. The servant returned and told his master what they had said. His master was furious and said, go quickly into the streets and alleys of the town and invite the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame. After the servant had done this, he reported, there is still room for more. So his master said, go out into the country lanes and behind the hedges, and urge anyone you come or find to come, so that the house will be full. For none of those I first invited will get even the smallest taste of my banquet. Now think about that we are being invited, and what's going to be our choice? Right? What are we going to say to God? Are we going to say, I'm too busy, I have these things I've got to take care of? Or are we going to come into His presence? Are we going to engage in a life that He is calling us into? And I love where it says, there is still more room. Okay? God doesn't cut people off His team. He invites. Right? And also, with us that have been following him, there's still more room. There's still more ways to step into a deeper relationship with him. And that's the thing I like. Yesterday I was watching college football, and Duke Blue Devils have been playing out of their mind this year. They're having a great season. And the coach said something very interesting when he was being interviewed about how the season's going and this long winning streak. I think it's the longest in school history. And the guy said, I'm telling my boys to embrace the competition, and each week the challenge gets greater. And not to look to the end game, but to enjoy each challenge as it gets greater, because each game has more significance. And I think about that. God is calling us into something greater. The challenges get greater. There's more purpose in it. There's more on the line. All right? And if we choose to embrace that, all right, we can step into his greatness. We can step into this purpose, all right, of what's going on. And so that's what's being presented to us today. And actually, I've had some guys that are going to help me out now, all right? We're going to get some invitations. We're going to get some invites, okay? And so make sure you do have a writing utensil, okay? So Matt and Nate and Diesel, all right? They're going to come around and they're going to give you, all right, an invite, okay? And so, saying, God is calling us in to something deeper. As soon as you get it, all right, please feel free to open it. Please feel free to read it, all right? And just realize that this is the great invitation. This is the offer, all right, that is being set before us. And kind of as they're passing out, I'll tell an interesting story that I wasn't sure if I was going to tell or not. Okay? I first gave my life fully to God whenever I was in college. And I remember the summer after I graduated, I got to work at an outdoor Christian camp. Had a great summer. But I got to share my testimony. And I remember at the end of my testimony, I remember saying to the crowd, I can't wait to see what God is going to do. I'm so excited, all right, to see. And I know a lot of times that's the mountaintop experience, all right? But it's been so cool 9 years after to see what God has done, all right, with that willing heart. What God, all right, has allowed me to experience, all right, the depth of my relationship with Him compared to what it was 9 years ago, all right? And that's what He's calling us into. Okay, so if you look, all right, at your invitation, like any invitation, you have a choice. Okay, there is a box there. All right, if you choose, again, maybe this for you is the first step into a relationship with God. Maybe this is a step to go deeper. If that's you, check the box. Yes, I'm going. And again, I will not be collecting these. You will not be showing this to anybody. This is between you and God. Okay. So I won't see these, no one will see these. These are up to you. All right, like that. You say no, you let the blank space. Why? Well, what's the thing, especially for the rich young ruler? Okay? What's the thing? What's the pride? What's the possession? What's the thing that's saying, for me, a lot of times it's fear. For me, all right, it's worrying about what other people think about me. Okay? Failure. What's the thing? But hopefully, God's tugging on your heart, all right, in one way to go deeper and to engage in this life with Him. And the last part is if you say yes. What's the next step for you? What's something you can start the ball rolling? Okay? Maybe it's a phone call. Maybe it's a discussion. Maybe it's an email. I know for me, some guys will even calling me into is getting hooked up or involved with family access networks at some of the high schools, and that involves an email. That's my action step. Because God's calling me deeper into that. Okay? Maybe it's mentoring someone else. Okay, I just kind of threw some things up there, especially our youth. I would love to have some people that really enjoy kids that can say, hey, I'll take one, I'll take a small group of the same age kids, and I'd love to really start to fill into their lives. Right? Maybe you're an older couple and you say, hey, I'd love to come alongside a younger couple and really kind of mentor them and talk to them. Maybe God's been urging that because you have experience and you have wisdom. Great opportunity if you just want to serve. Maybe you've never really got out into a serving environment. All right, this Friday coming up, we'll be serving at the family kitchen. Okay, that's different from what we're going to do with our youth group. All right, but that's this Friday, and we get to go down and see families, people living on the street. All right, and it's a very cool opportunity. I like to show up at high schools at lunch and just pick up trash and talk to kids. Come along. Sometimes it's just showing up and seeing what God's going to do with that. Again, if your schedule's open, that's something you feel, hey, I just want to show up, I'm going to do that. Hey, you got gifts, you got talents. God has given you things that you can help all of us with. Come start to serve. Come start to talk to one of us with this. Maybe just being one involved in your family. God is calling you to that. I don't know what it is, but I think you and God know. And so, for you, what's the action step? We're going to give you guys some time, all right, to sit there and do that. Feel free during this time to have small discussions or to write. We're going to play a song. I'm going to ask people that I talked to before to be up here if you want someone to pray with you through these things. If you want to even just come up and treat this as an altar and just come and pray before God. We just want this time and space to be intimate and give you an opportunity to really, all right, talk with God and see what He's saying and seeing what that next step is. And so we're going to take some time, we'll put on some music, and there will be people up here if you want to pray or have people pray and talk with you.